Yeah.
Welcome to the Coach's Edge podcast. Excited to get after it with one of our Kramer basketball coaches. Zach Yorke was our main Kramer basketball coach throughout the course of our CB summer basketball camp tour in 2024. Um, in total, Zach, 1,015 players was the number that I calculated as far as how many players I had the chance to see throughout the course of the summer. And you worked out of those 9, 10 weeks of camps, 5, 6 weeks yourself, traveling around with me throughout the state of Michigan, and we had a blast. And so, to get your perspective, to learn from you on this podcast, from the perspective of somebody who was in high school not that long ago, who's now a college athlete entering their final year, and who also has the aspirations of continuing to coach for years and years to come, combined with you do basketball training on your own. You ran an awesome basketball camp in Millington, Michigan this year, and then you were attached to Kramer basketball. So just the variety of experience that you have as a young age, I mean, a little envious to be honest. I mean, you got a great thing going, which is pretty cool. So, to those that haven't heard you on the podcast, before we dive into training and camps and player development, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Coach, thanks for having me on. Like Coach said, my name's Zach Yorke. I'm going into my fifth year of playing college basketball at Grace Christian University in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm from Millington, Michigan, which is over in the thumb of Michigan. I was a multi-sport athlete in high school, had multiple chances to play different sports in college, decided to play basketball. And like Coach said, I've been following him around for a couple years. I started going to camps with Coach later in my high school basketball journey, and openly, I wish it could have been earlier. Like I really think it could have helped me take another step. But I'm going into like I said, my final year of college, and I'm an education major with the hopes of being a middle school math and English teacher in a year or two.
So excellent. When we've had, many schools express interest throughout the course of the summer and being like, dude, you got a degree in education, you want to coach? Like, let's get you in here, which is obviously a great compliment when people see you coaching and working with kids and like, boy, we want that guy. We want to interview him for a job. That's pretty cool. You were the thumb player of the year, and which is for those listening, doesn't mean much around the country, but it's a certain area in Michigan. You were voted the best player in 2020. You have your COVID season this year. Um, each summer, I try to have one like main assistant coach travel and run basketball camps with me as much as they can. Right, my right hand. 2 years ago, it was my youngest brother, Micah. If you remember him on the podcast, he played 2 years at Mid Michigan. He had a short stint playing at Grace Christian. The year after that, we had Evan Neff at Concordia University. He just graduated. He's now teaching and going to be a varsity basketball coach next year. And then this year, Zach, you worked some camps for us in the past, but this year, like, you were my main guy. Anytime I could get you in the gym with me, I wanted you in the gym with me. And so, working with, I would say, out of the 1,000+ players that I had the chance to work with this summer, I would say you probably saw between 600 and 700 just with my stuff. And then you're doing some training and some other things on your own. What's your biggest takeaway from all the camps that we've run throughout the course of the summer?
My biggest takeaway is probably the details. Like when I think about camps, you think about details of like X's and O's or footwork or shooting form, but not to say that that comes easy, but that's like almost a given when you're running the basketball camp. You need to know those details. The details that really struck out to me were um, like setting up random stuff, getting the gym set up the day before. Because there's in the summer in Michigan high schools, there's always something going on, whether football was the day before, or there's a band concert, or they just redid the floor, or the one camp that we ran together about getting photographers, getting videographers, getting referees for the Thumb Elite Camp. There's a lot that goes into everything else besides just the basketball part, which the basketball is my main focus. That's the reason we're there. But it just showed me how much extra time and extra effort I need to put into everything else without taking away from the basketball part.
I remember running a 1 day basketball clinic. So I've been running basketball camps for almost 20 years. 2008, I ran my first basketball camp. And then we started doing it when I moved back from playing overseas a little more often, right? Until I went full time in 2014. But I still remember one specific camp. It was a paper handout, right? So you had to pay at the door. We printed out mass flyers, different schools, things like that. And we just put on the note, show up 10 to 15 minutes before camp starts to check in. So I show up like 20, 30 minutes before camp starts. There are a line going all the way from the table that we'd set up the day before, all the way to the entrance of the school of like 30 people waiting to come in, all there before me. Talk about embarrassing, right? Where all these people were there to check in for camp before I was even there. And I made that mistake once. I never made it again, right? But to your point, there's a lot of going on, and as you know, it's not just the setup of the actual facility, although you always run into different things like, oh, we got to move some tables sometimes because there was some thing going on here last night or whatever. But the prep that's behind the scenes on your computer, on your phone, like the logistics, right? The organization, the time management, all those different things to put an event on are a big deal. And we'll talk about the Thumb Invitational later on. But I apologize. I didn't preface this podcast how it's going to run very well. We're going to run this similar to when I have Coach Troshak on the podcast. Usually when Coach Tro do our podcast, we go like we each do a little research, a little homework, and we go back and forth, much more of like a conversation than the typical podcast where you just interview somebody. So Zach's the main guest. So he's got three that he wants to touch on. He's asking three to me. And then because he's the guest, he gets more talking time. So then I'm going to fire a bunch of questions at him to finish out the podcast. So Zach, go ahead, fire away.
Yeah, my first question for you is, what's some issues or a issue that you see that could be a trend within high school players or middle school players in the high school programs that you work with?
Yeah. So this is a great question, and I wish I had more time to go into this. I think it's a full hour conversation worth, but some quick bullet points that I put down compared to 10, almost 20 years ago when I started running some camps. Kids are like middle school kids that aren't they're not sure if they're really digging into basketball yet. Like the average kid is more out of shape than they used to be, for sure. Like there's so many camps that we run where, hey, we're running a basketball camp. It might be grades 5 through 8. And you just have like, we'll do a drill. And as soon as the drill's over, you'll see kids like just sit down on the floor. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? We have like 2.5 hours left. Like, why are you like, they're so out of shape. And so the lack of exercise compared to where it used to be even 10, 20 years ago is pretty staggering. Um, I don't know what do we do about that. Like when I was in school, we had PE, we had gym class a lot. My daughter, who's in first grade, will have PE class 1 day a week for like 30 minutes. So if I want to do something as a parent to make sure my kids are healthy and exercising, it now has to take place outside of the school day. Whereas before, if you worked hard in gym class, you're going to have some type of foundation, right? And so that's concerning. Number two, shorter attention spans. Um, it's very difficult when you're running a camp where you want to get detailed, as we've talked about with the skill aspect, the instructional aspect. But if you're getting detailed with something, it's going to take some time. And so it's like, how much faster can you get at explaining something without leaving out very important details? That's a challenge, right? Because kids just don't have the attention span that they used to. And I don't think adults really have attention spans as long as they used to. I don't think my attention span has probably gotten shorter over the years as well. That's just social media and stuff like that. So that's another trend. Uh, Another one that I noticed was, let me ask this to you. I don't remember kids missing so many layups because they were like underneath the basket. I don't know if this was just like specific to my summer of running camps. Like my daughter who's just turned 10 this summer, she's a culprit of it. Like I don't remember it being, we would go from camps in different states and different places. Kids would drive in, shoot layups almost underneath the hoop. And be like, if you angle yourself back a little farther, you're going to be able to use the backboard easily, and that shot's going to go in. It would get too close. And I don't remember, maybe it's just because I have more of an eye of it because I have a child at the youth level. Some of it is probably the hoops are still at 10 feet. You go to most gyms, they can't bring a hoop down. So you're limited by the 10 feet. You give them a girls basketball, of course, but sometimes that's even a little heavy for a younger kid. So I do think that that's a part of it. But I'll also see like high school kids do the same thing. Did you notice this summer?
I would say I noticed it with high school kids more than ever before. And I don't know if it's due to the fact that we were adding new skills and stuff before a layup. So
That could
these
be.
kids were just so used to taking one dribble, but now they had to think and shoot. And by the time they're looking to shoot, they were too close to the hoop. But I also think the with the younger groups, we never lowered the hoops. And I think like we'll have a fourth grade girl, and a lot of fourth grade girls can't get to the hoop. And I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, that was one thing I noticed. Teach your kids like we were emphasizing the block, and we have like a very basic triangle layup drill. They like go through two cones around the block, and that helps. But when you see kids just kind of go on their own, a lot of them are underneath the basket. So that's something to think about, regardless of what level you're coaching at, is do your kids shoot it too close to the basket? That'd bring a little farther back, and they're actually going to make some more shots. But the size of the hoop is huge. Another one, Zach, this was such a great question. I have three more, so I'm going to try to be fast. I'm sorry. This is your interview. Um, Programs seem to be divided. And what I mean by this is there's fewer programs that I feel like are in the middle. I feel like, and I'm not just talking about, and what's the record at the end of the season. When I'm going into a school, it seems like schools are almost like at the bottom or at the top as far as how everything's being run. They're trying to like start from scratch, and they're at the bottom of a hill trying to start pushing this boulder, or things are up and running and they have the youth program and they have assistants and they have volunteers and they have a good funding and sponsors, and they have the funds to pay me to come in and buy the new Dr. Dish and get good gear, things like that. And I don't know if this is because as we progress, we're getting a little more sport specific in everything. It's just the nature of the beast, I think. Maybe that's why. Whereas you don't just have like, hey, I play a little bit of basketball and I play a little baseball or volleyball or football or soccer, whatever it is. So those coaches that are able to really have like a gravitational pull where the kids really are into, could be a personality thing, success of the wins. They seem to have things up and running. The coaches that are struggling are trying to get to that point, and there's a bigger gap in the middle. So that's something that I noticed. Um, Another one that I noticed was, and this was super noticeable to me when we did the Hope College elite camp, college exposure camp. And when I spoke and I had a bunch of players come after me and talk about, hey, well, my message, and they asked me questions. And we also did some Q&A in front of the camp, and great questions, very specific questions as far as like nutrition and weightlifting and the amount of training and stuff like that in the off season, because all these kids want to play college basketball. The great questions, but my concern was don't let the perfect workout you don't have the perfect workout, so you don't do anything at all. And I think that because of the amount of information that's out there, it's very easy for us to become consumed with I got to do this. I got to do this. And I saw this on YouTube or Instagram, or this coach is doing this. And so it's an overload. You're like, well, I can't do it. Too much time, too much. You doing something is better than not doing anything at all. And it doesn't have to be perfect to get started. Learn as you go. This is the difference between being book smart or street smart. And what I mean by that is, if you were to go somewhere, right? If you were to go to Mexico, you wouldn't go with somebody who read all about Mexico. You'd want to go with somebody who'd lived there or who was from there, make it even better, right? Same thing with basketball. You learn from doing. And so I can look on YouTube for the best workout videos, but you know what the best way for me to work out is to go work out. And then it's going to be about putting myself around other people who have been where I want to be. And that's the benefit of having you, Zach, direct our camps, especially in the Thumb. Evan Neff, Adeline Moore, Colin Miller, any of our local athletes who have gone on to play college basketball, because there's kids that want to be where you are. And so if I can't be a college player right now because I'm in high school, what's better than looking on YouTube and trying to figure out what it's like to be a college player? I want to hang out with a college player. I want to learn the drills. I want to compete against a college athlete. That's the next best thing. And so that's one of the things that I love about our camps and having an assistant like yourself is you're able to not just teach, right? But you're able to do with the kids. And when you can actually do something, you learn at such a faster rate than just hearing about it or just watching it. And so that's my encouragement to the players that are listening to this episode is like your best way to improve your game is from actually doing, right? And then you'll learn how to make things more effective, more efficient as you go. Comments on that, Zach? And then I'm going to fire another question at you.
Yeah, I just kind of piggybacking off your last point. You said that you have guys coming up to you and asking you for advice about nutrition, weights. I had a couple. There's guys that when I hop in drill, know if it's because I'm going my fifth year and I've learned over the years, but we're doing a shooting drill and Algonac, and they got the really young varsity team, and I'm beating them because I'm a fifth year college player, but like I'm ticked that I'm not beating my score from 3 days before. So that would be my takeaway is like competing always in everything that you do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's you compete the competition and competing against yourself, right? Like you're going with against these high school kids in a drill. You're not competing against the high school kids. You're competing against yourself. You got a higher standard, right? Than if you beat them in a drill. I think that's a big one. What yeah, it's what have you taken away from our camps that as a college athlete going in your fifth year that you can apply to your own game?
Yeah, so there's two things that I really pointed at. One for me and my game individually, and the second is for my team as a whole as a leader. And the first one for me is shooting points. Anyone that has seen me play before, especially in high school, I'm left-handed, and my shot never looked great in high school, and it's significantly improved since I've got to college. And I had a really successful fourth year of shooting. Like I shot the ball from three really well this year, but sometimes when I miss, I always hear get it up, get the two not enough arc, but and I've heard get your elbow above your eyebrow before, but really teaching it myself this year clicked for me. Like, oh, it's not this high exaggeration where my elbow isn't where I want it to be. But when my shot's flat, when I'm getting inconsistent, it's because my elbow isn't high enough up. I'm not getting enough arc on my shot. And, we had a scrimmage this summer. My college team did down at Indiana Wesleyan University, and there was like 20 college teams there. And the first day I shot horrible. And all my assistant coach, who's super close with, was telling me was like, your shot's flat, your shot's flat. And then I went back that night and I'm thinking about it, and I was like, dude, just get your elbow up. And then I shot great the next day, and it came off my hand well. and everything else. But because my shot was so flat and just having that visual of the elbow being above the eyebrow, I'm really hoping this year when I get to those streaks, I can analyze my own shot and be like, I need to do this or I need to do that or whatever. My feet are off, my elbows off, my hips are off, and analyze it and then fix it for myself instead of waiting till I go 0 for 9 or I'm on a cold streak. The second piece that I'm going
Well,
to
I
take
just want
away.
to
So I'm
interrupt
going
you.
into my fifth year, like
Analyze
I
is the
said.
big word.
Oh, yeah.
You said analyze, and that's my biggest hope for all the kids that we train is that they're able to then teach themselves exactly what you're talking about. So that is a fantastic stuff. Keep going.
The second thing is, so I'm in my fifth year, but I'm actually going in my fourth year as a captain at Grace. So I wasn't a captain my freshman year, but my sophomore year on, I've been. And after working these camps this summer, I've realized how much like I'm an intense person, but not intense of like screaming because I'm not a coach, but how specific I need to be on all the details, top to bottom. If our 14th guy isn't getting this play, I don't need to be like, well, he's not going to play anyways. No, I need to work with him. I need to take him outside of practice because I saw in camp this year how much better our camps ran when not that we had kids that were awful, but the floor of the camp was higher. The higher the floor, the smoother the camp ran. And we're college athletes, so our floor is way higher. But if we want to get to where we need to go, we bring in a freshman, me as a fourth year captain, like I got to make sure that our floor is raising and our bottom of our team isn't 12 steps behind everybody else.
Well said. Raise the floor. High standards. That's a big one. You're up.
All right. My second question is what is the best thing you learned from another coach that you worked with this summer?
Oh man. So each summer we do a lot of private camps, as you know. And so there's different conversations that I have leading up to a private camp, talking with the coach, anything specific that they want to have me instruct throughout the course of the week. So two things that I'll touch on real quickly. I won't go nearly as long as I did earlier. One was the two-sided break. We had multiple coaches, different locations ask about like they want to improve their transition offense. I'd been talking to Coach Troshak, doing some of my own research on the two-sided break. Then I talked to the high school coaches. What do you think? Like, here's how the two-sided break works. I think it's a good fit. Might watch some game film with them. What the two-sided break is. It's very simple, right? It's not anything, crazy. With the fact that teams are playing more 4 and 5 out, two-sided break complements that. And so you always hope that you're better than year before, more knowledgeable than you are the year before. And so like that was something that like I had to have conversations with coaches. I had to do my own research because as you know, it's one thing to do. It's another thing to teach someone else to do. There's another level of understanding you have to have. And so I really had to do my own homework this spring on the two-sided break and continue to do some more of it throughout the course of the summer. And to go back to the do portion, the first time we taught the two-sided break was in Bad Axe, Michigan. And I remember calling Coach Troshak, a friend of mine, and I was like, dude, I did a terrible job. It was awful. Like I taught two-sided break for like 30 minutes and it did not go well. And he's like, well, did you do this? And did you do this? Did you do this? I was like, yeah, it sucked. He's like, huh. And but that's like the do. Like the more you do it, you figure out like, all right, well, I was kind of doing what he told me to do, but when you're actually in there, you figure out how to become better at it. And then I had a chance to do it the next day and the next day. And then I went to another camp a couple weeks later and we did it for 3 more days again. And by the end, the kids are saying like, coach, we're going to do this during the season, right? Like we're going to run like this kind of transition during the season, right? And the coach is like, yeah, we're going to do that. And I was like, I got them. Like they're in and they all got it. And so it's just practice. So that's one takeaway from, a self-development standpoint is, you're always trying to be a student in the game, X's and O's wise. That was something that I had to dig into. And then the other one was um, more coaches this year than in years past asked me to run some instruction about what players could do in the off season when they're on their own or when they're just like going in to work out with a couple other players than I've had in the past. In the past, it might be, hey, we want to do finishing, we want to do shooting, we want to do attack. And of course, we do those at different camps throughout the course of summer, but more wanted like just the individual. And so that was fun because for me, I was able to say, hey, here's what I did as playing overseas, and here's some things I did in college, and here's some things I did in high school. And the big one was if I could go back in high school again, here's what I would do differently. Here's some things that I did that worked well. I would keep some of those. And so just to kind of be able to go back down and say, I did a lot of things right, but there's always room for improvement. Here's some things I would change if I could be in high school again and do it all over. And I think that has a lot of power for kids that are really hungry to get better because they look at me, and if they're asking themselves, like, all right, this dude was really good back in the day, and he's telling me that what he did could have been better. Okay, maybe I should be a little more specific in how I think about what I do. Maybe I should take exactly what coach was doing and try it. Or I can kind of tweak it and make it my own, which is what I really recommend. And so those were the two things that I had a lot of fun with, and I think I got better at throughout the course of the summer.
Yeah, I wasn't there for the first day and bad X for the two-sided break, but I could tell the improvement from day 2 to day 3 of how much better and how much more engaged those players were, both on the boys and the girls side. Because I love like that two-sided break, something I've done every year in college with two different coaches, and that's become like one of my favorite things we've always done to start
Mhm,
practice.
mhm, mhm, mhm. I like it. I like it. And I wish I would have, been a little more on that earlier with some other transition stuff that I thought was maybe a little too complex, too advanced, a little too many things. And sometimes addition is subtraction, and two-sided break to me is like very simple, but because of its simplicity, you have even more options of what you could do within it. And that's one of the reasons I like it. We'll get into the two-sided break at some future day with Coach's Edge, video and podcast and all that stuff. Zach, next question. How'd your body hold up? And not just body physically, but also mentally. It's a grind being in the gym all day, all summer long.
Yeah, so I'm a gym rat. So going into the summer, like I thought it'd be no big deal. Like I'm in the gym 4 hours a day, every day, working out, lifting, training. Like I was like, oh, it won't be a big deal. Then we get towards the end of the summer and like my legs are dying. Like my little nagging injuries that I felt in February during my season are back. Like I pulled a hamstring for my start of my last year, and we get to the end of the year, and every day I'm like, I got to spend 10 minutes warming up my left hamstring again. Like I feel like it's the middle of the season. So I'm honestly glad that I went through that because it's shown me that how much more I need to lift and focus on my body. Like I'll have my break, my leg will be back before the season starts. But how much more specific I need to be with my stretching. I've started doing yoga more regularly because like it kind of opened my eyes a little bit of like you're in good shape, but your body isn't as good enough a shape. And if you can't coach for 10 weeks, how are you going to play for, college season's long. Our first game's in October and, we play till March. Like it is a long, grueling season. And playing as long as I have, I got a lot of miles on my body. So how am I going to make sure I don't pull something or make sure I don't roll an ankle? So stability and helping with flexibility is, I think, going to go a long way for me. Mentally, I would say it was kind of streaky for me to be real with myself. I never realized how I honestly I thought I was way better mentally than I am. And it's not to say that mentally is a weak point for me, but in my head I was like, oh, I go through the whole college year. I'm a math major. I'm taking hard high level math classes, 18 credits, going to practice, working out like, oh, it'll be nothing. And then we're on our third day of camp and it's lunchtime and I'm ready to go to bed. So realizing like how do I like I talked about improving physically, yoga, lifting, how do I improve mentally? So when I leave, not brain rotting when I go home, meditating on the day, sitting and thinking about what I did personally, what I need to improve on, coming with individual goals. And I think that's going to lead me into my season and my future career coaching, because it's really easy to go through the motions, to set up a camp, think about what you're going to do the weekend before, the week before, and then just do it. And whether it goes good or bad, you're just going through the motions. Versus if I meditate on lunch, I meditate at the end on what I need to work on and what my strengths were. I think that'll help me mentally, just with some longevity.
Mhm. Yeah, it's, I'm gonna throw a couple more questions at you with this one, because some of the notes that you mentioned tie right into to some of this, and that's winning off the court, right? You mentioned winning off the court and some of these extra things that can give you an advantage that maybe we're not paying as much attention to as we thought. Um, and there's nothing like running a camp all day except running a camp all day. There's not. You can't compare it to something else. And it's not to say like that's the hardest thing to do, because people got real jobs, right? I'm in the gym coaching basketball, like I'm blessed, right? But the the wear and tear on the body affects the mind, the mental, because when it's one thing to be in the gym all day, but like you said, Zach, if you're asking me to go train in the gym all day by myself, lift weights, work out, all this stuff, I can do that as long as anybody, right? But when you go into the gym and it's like, hey, Zach, you're in charge of 30 people today, and then you're gonna have a little break, and then there's gonna be 30 more waiting for you, and you're in charge of them too, and you're exercising while you do it, right? I was texting with your dad, and just being like, man, Zach's talking about being tired, and I was texting him back. It's like I'm exhausted at the end of the summer. It's a long stretch. But I was like, the best way to compare it is, imagine you're teaching math class all day, but you have to exercise while you're teaching and you're on your feet the entire time. That combination, right? You have a classroom of kids, you have them there for 3 hours at a time instead of 50-minute blocks. You're trying to teach them something. Some of them are interested, some of them aren't. But you also have to exercise the entire time that you're doing it, as far as demonstrating and all that different stuff. That's not easy. So Zach, winning off the court, talk
Yeah.
about sleep, diet, everything that goes into, what that means to you.
Yeah. That is honestly I think it's been my biggest advantage of my game in college is, I'm 6'1" on a good day. You see me out in the basketball court. I don't have a basketball build. I was with Coach Neff last week up in Alpena, Michigan, and he described me as he looks like he's a middle linebacker, which is a true statement. But I've been able to be successful because like I get a ridiculous amount of sleep. Like I'm so big on sleep, and everyone needs a different amount. Like I have a younger brother who plays in college, and he needs 8 hours a night, while like I get nine and a half a night. Like I'm the only college student on our whole campus that's going to bed at 10 o'clock at night, because I want to wake up at 7:30 and work out before we have chapel. I think it gives me an edge. I think I'm more locked in than everybody is. I think it helps my body recover. I mean, I don't think it's scientifically proven, but just over the course of my career, I can tell you when I was early in my high school career, I didn't value sleep. And there's moments in whether it's AAU or high school games where I can tell you I played bad because of how tired I was or how not locked in. And I also think that adds to my diet. Whether that doesn't mean like I'm calorie deficit or I'm something like that, which I've done. I've lost a lot of weight since I was in high school, but making sure, and this is something I'm really adding to this year to try to improve on, is making sure I focus on my protein levels, my carb levels before the game, my sugars. I used to view sugars as a really bad thing, but if I'm going into practice and I've been in class all day, I might need to eat some blueberries. I might need to eat a granola bar with some more sugar to give me a good energy. I don't want to be drinking a large amount of energy drinks twice a day try to give me this fake amount of caffeine. No, I need to focus on what my body's going to digest and what's going to make me feel the best throughout the course of the day, the course of the week, and like I said, throughout a long season. Because if I eat like trash in October, November, well, then, Christmas time comes, Thanksgiving comes. Well, then you come back to your team in January and you're not going to flip a switch because you're playing more games, you're traveling more, and then you're going to be more tired. And since I'm already in my head, if I'm ahead on my diet and my sleep before everybody else catches on, guys will flip a switch when it comes to the tournament time. I'm going to go to bed early now, or I'm not going to eat this candy that I normally eat. Well, I'm 6 months ahead of you. I think that also relates to reading and watching film because I'm a film junkie. Like we played our rival school this year, another school in Grand Rapids, and they had the number one 3-point shooter, regardless of level, on minimum of 5 attempts a game. He shot 53% from three on 9.5 attempts a game. And I'm not talking catch and shoot. I'm talking step backs. And so when I tell you I watched every shot on Synergy 3 times, that's not an exaggeration. Because Herm, that's his name is Herm, and Herm's extremely talented, and he's bigger and he's more athletic than I am. But my matchup was him, and I wanted to win that game so bad that I needed a mental edge. And it ended up being extremely successful for me. And I played probably the best defense of my career in all 3 matchups when I got to play against him because of all these off the court things I did away from the team, in my apartment room, by myself, with my roommate, that helped me get a second edge.
Talk about reading a little bit more. You've mentioned the film, you've mentioned the sleep, you've mentioned nutrition. I like what you mentioned about the sugar. It's not like you're drinking a can of Coke before practice because you want to get, like some natural sugars to get you, like you said, fruit has natural sugars, not an additive where somebody's dumping 40 grams of sugar inside something. And obviously that's terrible for you, right? So there's a difference there. But anyway, talk about reading, and you don't hear that from a lot of college athletes.
Yeah, reading's been something my dad's been pushing on me since I was in high school, and it's not something I've done every year. But within the last 2 years, I've spent more time on it. It's I like to read about mindsets. You hear Mamba mentality a lot, and that's almost becoming so glorified because Kobe was so extreme, and nobody's probably going to be like Kobe ever again because of Kobe, who that was. Yeah, that's who he is, and I don't want to be like that because that's not how necessarily I'm wired. But I want to take aspects from how he was wired, or aspects of coaches. Or one book that I read that I got for Christmas last year was called Winning in the Dark, and it was about there was this high school student. It's a true story. High school student played sports, got cut. I think it was a soccer team. His grandpa led crossing wires. I forget the name of what it's called, but walking across wires as a sport. And they did it. They practiced at 5 a.m. every day. And he's asking his grandpa, why? He's like, because this isn't about glory. It's about winning. And if I'm winning when nobody's watching, I'm taking the next steps. And so the whole point was winning when nobody's watching. And I think that's, especially in basketball culture right now, that's something that I wish every player would read because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. And I have no problem with mixtapes or cool pictures, but when I see somebody and I only know you're in the gym when you post it on social media, that irks me. Whether you're my teammate, and I'll call guys out on my team, I only know you're in the gym twice a week because you post it every time you're in the gym, or whoever it is. But I've really developed winning in the dark now is something that I think about consistently because of reading, and it helps calm me down at night and think about because I'm an overanalyzer. So if I go to bed without thinking about something else, I'm not going to fall asleep because I'm thinking about A, B, and C that happened at practice.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if I read my book for 9:45 to 10 o'clock, it's calm me down and then it adds to my sleep. And I think all of those things kind of tie together.
Yeah, great stuff. Winning in the Dark. Josh Metcalf is the author.
Yeah.
Former Division I college athlete, does a lot of mental skill consulting and things like that. That's great read. All right, Zach, fire one at me.
So we kind of just hit on this, but how do you battle mental fatigue? Because I believe that our summers as coaches and running camps relate directly to a player in February and late January and March of a practice you might have a 6 a.m. practice on a Friday. And how do you mentally prepare yourself for that?
Yeah, I this is something I also have an interest in, right? I read books on it, listen to podcasts on it. Um, I was had a ton of admiration for Kobe and Michael Jordan just because they were deemed like the two most mentally tough basketball players you were going to find. So always had an interest in that, and always was like, where I was from growing up was a big football school. And so it was always about being tough, being tough, being tough. But it was always physical. And I was like, listen, I'm pretty fairly tall. I'm 6'3". I got really long legs and arms. I can get stronger, but I'm not gonna put on like a ton of weight. Like you're not gonna look at me at any point, Zach, and be like, boy, he's really physically tough. I can play physical, but I'm not gonna be imposing. So at a young age, I was just like, but I can be mentally tougher than you. Like you could be pulling on my jersey and cheap shotting me and stuff like that. And I can act like I don't even see you. Right. You're not even there to me. Right. And to me, that was a sign of like mental toughness. And I felt like a lot of that was just like the situation that I grew up in and maybe some of the coaches that I had that they kind of threw me into the fire. And like that was my way to succeed was I had to figure out how to have a mental level of toughness because physically people were going to beat the crap out of me in practice and in games. So like that may have been a little bit of where it started. Um, and then building that into the mental fatigue that you're talking about, which is being in the gym all day, and I remember we were in Yale, right? It was one morning before Yale, and you were standing next to me. You're like, dude, look at all these kids. I was like, yeah, it's pretty crazy, right? I mean, they're all, and the thing is, Zach, like they're there to learn from you and me. That's why they showed up, right? It's not a school camp, right? It's Kramer basketball. They showed up for Kramer basketball camp. And as cool as that is a ton of mental fatigue on you because like the show's on and you're in charge. You're the lead singer, essentially, right? It's exhausting. So there were a couple things that I would kind of run through real quick. So when I wake up in the morning, especially in the summer as I've gotten older, I have allergy sinus problems. So when I wake up in the morning, my body's killing me. And most mornings in summer, I wake up and I'm like, holy crap, I got to do this again. Right. And that's like some of the first thoughts that you come into your mind. Most thoughts, again, are negative. Right. I have a negative thought when I wake up of like, your body hurts, you're sore, and my sinuses, I have like a mild headache and all this congestion in my head. So I lay in the bed and I tell myself, Steve, half of the crap that you're feeling right now is not because you've been in the gym all day. It's just because you got allergies. So you're going to wake up, you're going to take your allergy pill, you're going to get vertical. Some of that stuff's going to kind of come down and you're going to feel better. So it's not that you got to be in the gym all day. It's not associated with that. So that's one of the first things that I tell myself in the morning. Second thing, Steve, you take a cold shower, you're going to feel better. You're going to wake up faster. You're going to be more alert. You're not going to like slowly wake up throughout the course of the day. When you hop in a cold shower and you come out, you're awake because a cold shower sucks. So I take my cold shower for every single basketball game. Do that. Now I'm awake. All right. Now I'm awake. As you well know, I took a nutrition shake that was over 1,000 calories every morning. Every single morning of the summer, I took that one. Now, one day I took about a 1,600 calorie shake, and you had to run camp that morning instead of me because my stomach hurt so bad. I was like, Zach, you're in charge. I'm going to be like, just kind of be on the periphery, helping kid out here and there and stuff like that because my stomach hurts so bad. I ate way, way too much. So I found also what's the most I could get as far as like filling up because I don't like to eat a lot for lunch. My body doesn't. I just don't like to eat a lot of lunch for at camps. where I could eat a lot, be full, feel good, but not too much. So I would do that. I also had a little sticky note. I had multiple sticky notes in my truck, right? But one sticky note I had, and you were in my truck, so you saw a few of these sticky notes, but I had a sticky note on the left side of my truck that said 11-year-old Steven is what it said, right? It just kind of had the one on the side where you were at, and then there's a little sticky note. I don't know if you saw it said 11-year-old Steven. And if I looked at that every morning, right? I looked at that every morning, I was able to remind myself of how cool it is that I get to do what I do. If you're a college athlete, even a high school athlete, sometimes you need a reminder of how cool it is to do what it is you do. If you're a varsity basketball coach, sometimes you need a reminder how cool it is to do what you do. Because there's a lot of tough things, there's a lot of suck in anything that we do. But I would look at that and I would say, if I could go back in time and tell my 11-year-old self, hey, man, someday when you're done playing basketball, you're going to get to travel around the United States and teach it to other kids and be in a gym. You know how excited my 11-year-old self would be? Be like, wait, I don't have to get a real job. I can do, that's what I'm going to make a living doing. 11-year-old Steven would be pumped, right? And so I take myself every single morning when I drive into the car for at least a few seconds. I take myself to the conversation I'm having with my past self and how excited he is to do what I'm about to do, because I know it's going to hurt. I'm going to be sore. I'm going to be tired. There's times I'm going to be frustrated, and it's still all worth it. So, and then the last thing, which goes into being an athlete in general, reminding myself God's love is not performance based, right? And so to me, that's a freeing feeling. I'm very hard on myself. I beat myself up a lot, but so I need to always that reminder of God's love is not performance based. And so the freeing feeling for that is like, if I just go and I do the best that I can, that's enough. I don't need anything other than just like, hey, I went, did my best. I made a bunch of mistakes. Some didn't go as planned. God's love is not performance based anyway. I just went and worked hard. I did my best. I'll try to do a better job tomorrow. Those are some of the mental ways that I battle fatigue throughout the course of the summer, because the summer is my end season. And I honestly think an athlete, even a coach, could take every single one of the things that I do and do it not just in season, but throughout the course of the year, and it would help them.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the sticky notes in your truck. That's something I've thought about even putting in my apartment because, quick reminders. Like I have reminders that go off on my phone. 9:35 says be great,
Mm.
and then 3 o'clock says what are you doing to beat one of our rival schools?
Mm.
Because I think having reminders that like what's my goal or something like that helps you. Like that reminder about beating our rival, we lost to him by a lot my freshman year, and I created that reminder. And every day since that game in January of
Pops
my
up.
freshman year at 3 o'clock, that reminder has gone off.
That's awesome. That's very cool. That's very cool. Um, yeah, it's huge. Sports are mental. They're so mental. Granted, you have to have the physical capabilities, right? So it's better to be tall. It's better to be fast. We know these things. But beyond that, like there's a mental aspect of this game, and a more mentally tough you are, more likely you are to succeed. Um, from a skill standpoint, Zach, I want you to talk about playing off of 2 feet and how that has impacted your game, right? And also, how you teach others as far as finishing off of 2 feet. That's something we talk about a lot on the podcast.
Yeah, I joked early in the summer that like the stride stop finish is like the Kramer basketball go to move, and it really is because like you watch the national title game and everybody glorifies UConn now because UConn plays off of 2 feet. Every time they get in the paint, they play off 2 feet. And growing up, I had some really good coaches that told me that, but it was always in my head with a jump stop. instead of a 1-2, whether inside foot or outside foot. And I hated it. And I used to get yelled at all the time to jump to make passes, which I still jump to make passes because a lot of time I'm doing it for power and I'm not super huge to get over some arms. But with my size and my lack of athleticism for the college level, I would not finish inside of 12 foot if I didn't go off of 2 feet. So I've focused on my game personally and saying, like, I'm strong. Like, that's a strength of mine, is like physical upper body, lower body strength. So if I get on 2 feet and I can bump you, it doesn't matter if you're 6'9", 6'10". Like, I probably got you where I want. And that's been really something that I focused on with my training. And you mentioned how I ran that camp in Millington. I taught the stride stop finishing at this camp before, and these kids had never seen this in their life. Like, we're a football town. There's not a lot of basketball opportunities for a lot of these kids. So when I came in and taught that, they were like, this is, even the kids that play basketball struggle. But I saw as day 2 went on how much more comfortable they got, and then how kids started implementing it into their scrimmages. And after that day, I was like, if these kids that, not to say they're bad basketball players, they just haven't spent a lot of time working on skills, they picked it up that quickly in one day, in one session of camp, and implemented to their game already. I was like, wow, like this could, like, I used to think it was only a high level player. Like, you had to be, a good high school varsity player for me to implement this move because you couldn't do everything else. And then I was just, you know what? Like, I don't care if you're a freshman girl that I trained. We're going to implement this move because I know you can do it now. And so I love it that UConn was so successful because it kind of gives me backing a little bit because everybody saw how good UConn was. And now that it's so popular, me as a coach can be like, oh, did you see what they did? Or did you see what this guy did? Lower level schools. Millington, my school where I'm from, has ran into powerhouses in the playoffs for basketball. But to be like Oakland upset Kentucky this year because their best player played on 2 feet, I think that has given hope. Not to say 2 foot is like the end all move, but it has given guys that are less athletic, less vertically challenged, to be more of a chance to play. And I see it in my game, and I see it. It's something I'm going to teach forever when I start coaching.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, I mean, you might teach the basics of it to a younger player, and then they get a little older, a little better. Okay, now here's some pivot finishes out of it, or some shot fakes out of it, or okay, it doesn't have to be a stride stop, right side, right hand finish. Like, you can finish with your inside hand, or you can finish outside your body, or you know, underneath the ball. And like, you can cater this to the player, right? Which is great. Um, so that's a big one. Another one, on your topic of playing off of 2 feet, was you stressed the importance of being able to show somebody this works. So if you watch college basketball, you know it works. You've watched Villanova play, win national championship doing that. You watch UConn play, win national championships doing that, playing off of 2 feet. To have a person like you be able to demonstrate and also compete is huge. Now, you remember when we were in Frankenmuth for a basketball camp, right? And we went through a progression of finishing moves, inside foot, outside foot, I think was the specific series that I'm thinking of in my mind. We went through a variety of finishes that a player could possibly use trying to finish around the hoop. We try them out, and then we play one-on-one. So the benefit of having you at camp, I don't have to go on offense all the time. I say, Zach, you're on offense, right? So Zach goes on offense, and he proceeds to score every single time against good, solid varsity basketball players using every single move that we just practiced. And for us to be able to, like, what an advantage that is when you're running a basketball camp, is to be like, we can explain it, we can show it, we can show it through physically demonstrating it. Oh, you want to see it live too? You want to see it where somebody's actually body to body trying to stop you from scoring, and we're using these exact moves we just practiced to score? Like, if you're not bought in to that this stuff works, I don't know what else to tell you, right? Because there might have been one guy guarding you that was actually smaller than you at that camp, right? And you were still finishing with ease against bigger, longer guys, right? So,
Yeah, I think it was.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I think it was only one of the guys, and one of those was a relative of mine, and I actually talked to him afterwards about, he's 6'4", he's 190 pounds, he's a going to be a junior, like he's a big high school basketball player, he's a football player. Um, about like basketball isn't your sport, but do you see how precise I am with all these things we do? And like, okay, you're not a basketball player, but taking it to whatever he does after that, because you can tell that I've spent time doing it and it doesn't matter how big I am. Because if he wants to play at a high level of football, someone's going to be bigger than him.
Mhm.
He wants to win in basketball in high school, somebody's going to be bigger than him. So I think that buying in, and I thought the Frankenmuth kids were like, wow, because some of them didn't, like a lot of them didn't see me play in high school because I've been graduated for a while. Like I played Frankenmuth last time was my junior year. So to them, I'm just some random kid, some random college guy that you bring in. So I think buying into whatever we teach is like half the battle,
Yeah.
especially when we go to places where guys aren't familiar.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, no question about that. And having demonstrations like that go a really long way. We've touched on this a little bit already, but talk about the importance of the weight room and how that's, played a role for you, and obviously the role that that can play for other players who want to play at a high level.
Yeah, when I think about the weight room, I think about two big things that I like to focus on. I like to focus on just my pure strength, but then I also like to focus on my endurance. So when I'm in the weight room, for me, my emphasis in high school was always about, like, I played football, I went to a football school, it was always about putting on muscle, getting as big as you possibly could, which was great. It didn't always translate perfectly for me playing basketball because there was a time where I was built like an offensive tackle trying to play shooting guard small forward, and it just wasn't a good combination. But when I got to the point of realizing like I need strength but also lifting for endurance, of my body will be able to jump 3 times tipping a board because I just squatted, 6 sets of 6 or 4 sets of 6 at, or I used to do, I did this workout. I don't know if it's still on the coach's edge, but it was when I started getting into more basketball specific lifting, was 3 sets of 15 with lower weights for my squats. And I did that for 2 summers because my legs got to the point where I was so, like, my endurance was so high because I was squatting 225 for 3 sets of 15, or I was doing my 100 lunges in the day. And I also think that's helped me not get these knick-knack injuries. Like I've had slight ones, but I talked about this hamstring earlier. I've spent a lot of time on hamstring curls and straight leg deadlifts and making sure, because I've played with guys. I had a teammate my freshman year pulled his hamstring in the Sweet 16, missed the Elite Eight game we lost, and it hurt him the whole following year. And he was one of my favorite teammates, but he would tell you like, oh, I didn't really lift. I'd jog, I'd play basketball. But I truly believe if he would have spent time on rehabbing on his own and focusing on that endurance of that hamstring, I mean, he was really good and he could have been 5 points a game better, which in college, 5 points a game is a ridiculous margin.
Yeah, it's a great point with the injury, because a lot of times when we think of weightlifting, we think of like bigger, stronger, but it's injury prevention. This is proven. Like we know this isn't hearsay, right? If you're stronger, you're reducing the likelihood of getting injuries, right? Your muscles have the ability, like you mentioned your hamstring. Like if you weren't as strong as you were and you went into our summer camps, maybe you pull your hamstring instead of being like, you know what, it's kind of a little tight. I should just pay a little more attention to it today to get it to loosen up. Well, if you weren't in that type of shape going into the summer, you might have injured yourself instead, right? Um, I think of, my prep for the summer and talking to one of my, I got a, he's like my guru guy that I talk to in Northwest Ohio, Coach Sabo. And he kind of helps me cater my spring as far as prepping for the summer. He's like, Steve, you got to lift during the summer. I know you're exhausted. You got to lift weights during the summer because it's going to help you keep like some of that armor on your body. And if I go back and do the summer over again, I'd have found a little more time to lift weights. But the thing that he said that got me through was, he's like, even if you can only go 20 minutes, lift for 20 minutes compared to like the previous summer. Is like, man, I am dead tired. I am exhausted. I'm just going to rest. Cause as we talked about, rest is also really important. He's like, dude, you want to shock your body to the point that your brain and your body say, oh, I need to hold on to some of this muscle because I'm still using it. He's like, so the fact that you go in every now and then, a few days a week and lift for 20, 30 minutes, it's not like you're going to get super muscular doing it. He's like, you're not, but what you're telling your brain and your body is that they need to hold on to the muscle that you currently have because every once in a while you're going to use it like you did lifting weights. And that's going to help you stay stronger and more protected and healthy throughout the course of the summer. That did work. I did lift a little bit more often this summer than I usually have in the past. And as much as I feel like at the end of the summer, my body's falling apart, I've lost a bunch of weight, I'm hurting. Comparison to other summers, this was one of the better conditions I've felt. I finished the summer at 184, which is the heaviest I've ever finished the summer. I had one summer I finished at 168. It was disgusting. So like for me, it was a big step in the right direction. Last year I finished at like 182, 183. So I'm still getting better. My body's getting older, but my mind is getting better. And I think that's the kind of the battle we're all trying to work through as coaches and as players. So we've talked a little bit about the weight, Zach. I want to this maybe we've touched on this already, maybe not. Again, you've probably seen 700 players this summer. That's a lot. That's more than most people will see in their lifetime. 700 players in the summer alone. What's the biggest surprise from running camps? And maybe that's players related, or maybe that's just running camps as a whole.
I would say my biggest surprise is how much players will buy into you when you show them that you're buying into them, which doesn't sound like a crazy complex or a crazy idea. If I'm a coach, if I buy into my players, they'll buy back into me. But with us, we're coming into a school for 2-3 days. And sometimes they pay for Kramer basketball and they're coming in. And sometimes it's the high school basketball coach says, we're running it. There's a guy coming in, running the camp here. He played professionally. You're coming in. You're going to work with him. I've been to a lot of basketball things, and my struggle with in high school was, does this guy know what he's talking about? But when we show players, one, that we know what we're talking about and it's proven and we can do it and we can tell you and we can give you cases of how it's worked, but also like we thought about your program before we came here. We thought about your strengths and we actually know you as a player. You're the best player on your high school team and we know what you need to work on, and then they'll do anything. And that was really nice for me to see. Like, obviously we get people that are invested because parents are paying to send their kids to basketball camps or programs are paying to send their kids to basketball camps. But it shows that if you go through the motions on our end, they will go through the motions and we set the bar. So even though there's, 8 high schools we went to this summer that I've never been to before in my life, knew nobody there. But we left day 2 and some of the players, we follow each other on social media. They reach out to me now. They text me because they felt like I was invested in them. And that's something that I really want to make sure I focus on, whether as a player, as a teammate, whether as a player with my coaches, that I'm invested in what they're going to say, or whether I'm a coach in the future with my 7th graders. Because it's easy to be invested in your varsity players. It's hard to be invested on a 7th grader on the B team, but that kid could grow to be 6'6" and be your best player. So that was my biggest surprise, is like how invested that they'll get when you show interest in them specifically.
Mm-hmm. That might be my favorite part of running camps, is when you have that. And you're not going to shoot 100%, but for the most part, I think that's part of what makes our camps special, is that buy-in. You can feel it. It's hard to explain. It's hard to put into audio, but when you're in the gym, if it's there. All right, that buy-in and the care factor. And like you said, if people know you care about them, amazing things can happen, right? And so if I don't know I go to a gym, right? A lot of the gyms I go to, we run a lot of new events. So kids don't know me either, but like if they know I care about them, I care about this game, I care about like doing a good job, like, man, I should probably at least give this dude a chance, right? Because I can tell based on like how he's acting, what he's saying, like attention to detail. He's not just here. Like he's all in. He's both feet in, right? Then they start to be like, all right, well, I'm gonna jump in with both feet too. And it's like that last camp with our older boys and girls at USA. One of the most fun days of basketball camp that I had. You were in the gym, the dream team, right? Myself, you, Coach Neff. And like that last day, if you go to a camp and there's levels, like we had some seventh and eighth grade kids in there who were in over their head and they were just trying to swim with the big dogs, right? And then you had guys that were in there who had college offers, college commits, advanced players. They could have been like, I'm already one of the best dudes here. Like I'm good. And it's like, no, from top to bottom, everybody was sold out, right? Especially that last day. Like they were all in. You want them to run through a wall, they would have ran through a wall. It starts with care, right? And then you kind of go down the line, as you said, of like, dude, I've done my homework. You know, when I pull Andrew Caban over, right? And I say, listen, here's what we're working on this week. It's a one-on-one conversation. But I'm like, I know your team, I know your program. And although we're working on this stuff, you're looking for opportunities to space and catch and shoot, even though that's not your strength, because that's going to be something you need to do to help your team. Okay. You pull Connor McGarry to the side. He's one of the best players in the Be like, hey, listen, right? You pull Brad Coleman to the side, who's all state player. Hey, think about you pull a Sean Westlick to the side. Listen, I talked to your college coach. Talk to him. Here's what your game's going to be like at the next level. Here's some things I want you to concentrate on now. They know, right? And then you can have a more basic conversation to the seventh grade kid who's just trying to figure it out, right? It doesn't have to be as detailed or advanced as some of these guys that are going to play in college or high level high school, but it's that same care factor and having a high standard for what you do, right? So whether I'm tired or not, whether my body hurts or not, I go in and I got a standard for what this is supposed to look like. And I'm measuring that against what I think this group's potential is, right? So when we go to Lakers, and there's a lot of kids, you're in Lakers with us, who are new to the game, I'm not expecting them to do calculus. I'm expecting them to do addition and subtraction. But are they doing addition and subtraction the best that they can, right? And for the most part, they did. So I am happy. Y'all got an A, and essentially, right? You go to another camp, say, hey, we're doing calculus this week, right? We're doing trig. That's your standard, right? And so it's the same standard, but it's a different level of detail to it. And if you bring that energy, whether it's a third grader or a college player, you know, really good things, really good things are going to happen. I think this ties into what I've just been talking about for you, Zach, and that's advice to the players that you've had the chance to work with that do want to play college basketball. We worked with a variety of them this summer. What advice do you give them?
So I got asked that question a lot, and I hit on it a little bit earlier, but normally the advice that I hear my teammates or other college guys I know give to high school players is just get big, fast, strong. Everybody in college is big, fast, strong, which is a true statement. But I think the advantage is the IQ because, there's that stat that's well known of 3% of high school players playing college. I would love to see the percentage of that 3% that graduate playing their sport for all 4 years
Mm.
because I think it's such a small number because you need to find something that gives you the edge.
Mm.
And every year we recruit guys at my school that are big. Every year we find guys that are fast. Every year we find guys that can shoot really well. Like that's the thing I try to tell freshmen is like we have freshmen, let's say we have a freshman point guard and he doesn't play his first year. He thinks he's stepping up big and we're recruiting another freshman point guard. Well, you need to find something that differentiates you because there's a lot of yous. And it's not saying you're not special and you don't have the potential to be great. But if I'm coaching, I'm trying to not necessarily replace you, but if you aren't going to continue to grow that high bar, I'm going to find somebody that will. So having that IQ to know that there's players that do everything that I do. So I need to learn the game. I need to watch the game. I need to watch myself. Watch my freshman year, we had somebody who was a borderline All-American. And I spent a lot of time watching his film. Like I played with him and our roles were nothing the same. Like I was a sixth man my freshman year, but I knew by the time I was in my fourth, fifth year, I'm going to need to play more of a role that he played. So I spent a lot of time watching his film and what he did well and what he didn't do well. And there's things that I physically can't do that he did. But then there's things like he was extremely good with his footwork, 10 foot in as a guard. Like we're a smaller level school. He put up 30 points on Grand Valley, who was a ranked Division II school at the time. Like they're double teaming him. We're down by one at halftime. Like we have no business in this game because he was so good with his footwork, 15 foot in as a two guard at 6 foot, 6'1". I was like, wow, if I could do that with my strength already, that's something in the same school that I could implement for myself. So having that IQ and that self-realization, self-awareness is what separates everybody when they get to the next level.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. The IQ is, we kind of talk about it, but to hear from you hammer home with those examples is huge. You know, we glorify the grind, the hunger, the work, the sweat, but at the same time, um, the IQ is also part of that. The IQ is also part of that. There's a, it's not as sexy, right? As like lifted weights and getting bigger shoulders, right? Or being able to improve your jumping ability or your 3-point stroke. But the difference, do you have the hunger to watch more game film? Do you have the hunger to have more conversations with your basketball coach? Like, how many people want to do that? I'm going to chat with my coach today. Like, not many people really want to do that. But what an advantage that would be. Instead of wondering what my coach is thinking, how about I just ask him or her? What a huge advantage is there, right? Talk about playing in the fast lane and removing the guesswork, things like that. Go a very, go a very, very long way. Uh, Zach, we could go for a really long time. I'm going to hit you with maybe one more. I don't want to make any promises, but one more question here. Biggest weakness, biggest weakness of players overall that you saw this summer as a whole, and then how do you recommend us being able to fix that?
So you talked earlier about a gap between programs, like the low level, like the rolling the ball up the hill and keeping things rolling. I saw a similar gap with players that have never played with structures before and they're all like AAU style. They struggle with skill work, fundamentals, or players that are almost robotic because they're so used to a system or they're so used to this is what I do 100% of the time, which they both have value, but I think there needs to be a middle ground. So I think playing AAU is great. Like that was an advantage that I had going into college is how many games that I've played in my life. Like there's guys that I've played with that haven't experienced so many. Like I have a lot of end of game situations because I played 1,000 games since I was in fourth, fifth grade coming up. But my team, I luckily didn't play with a team that was just running with our head cut off, pressing. Like you got to find a fit for you, but that's not really the point. But then I see guys that play with their high school team and play with like a travel team that fills their high school team. They run one offense. They step the same way. They do the same things. So I think of letting kids develop that freedom of my skills and like I love structured open gyms, whether it's playing with like rules or making things where it's just not running with your head cut off. But I do think that freedom of shots that you necessarily wouldn't shoot in a game, I might shoot in open gym for a little bit. Or, I'm not somebody that dribbles a lot in games, but open gym is a time for me to practice. I've spent a move in the summer and I'm going to work on it. So finding a balance of game reps, but then also working on your skills. So if I'm on the end where I'm playing out of control, It's coming to camp. It's working with somebody one-on-one. And maybe not playing, going to the park 5 days a week and playing. Maybe I go to the park 2 days a week, and the other 3 days I work by myself, because I know I wish I would have played more random stuff growing up. Like, I didn't play in open gyms, which part of where I was at, and I played a lot of AAU, but I spent a lot. I worked on skills. I worked with my team. I worked with skills and my team instead of Monday I'm with my team, Tuesday I'm skills, Wednesday I might get some shots up in the morning and go play in an open gym. Like, I think there needs to be more of a balance of that freedom and also that skill development and team stuff.
And a lot of what you're saying is, it's because a lot of it is what situations are we putting our kids and our players in as parents and as coaches, right? Because we're essentially controlling a lot of the time, right? That's your family or that's your team. So, how are we able to tweak and things like that, um, goes a really long way. For me, it was the opposite. I worked a lot of my individual skills, tons. Um, my gameplay was more like open gym though, like park, like going playing with my dad in the Sunday, Wednesday night. Hey, they need an extra guy when I was younger, going in and playing 5-on-5. So it was also what you're talking about of, you know, yeah, we were keeping score and we're going to a game, but there's no free throws, there's no shot clock, there's, or quarter clock and things like that. So I missed out on some of the end of game experiences and where's the ball being thrown in. It's like, no, we just check it up top every time, like things like that. But the bonus was like, it's very much of a open, hey, you want to screen for somebody, you screen for them, right? You want to spot up in the corner, you spot up in the corner. You want to, keep working on driving, go ahead. Like, there's no system that we're playing in. The benefits of that. And it's a good for me to hear you say that, because it's a reminder for me of, um, if kids aren't getting that, how can I try to incorporate at least a little bit of that with our training in our basketball camps? That's one thing that I've done a lot more. When I started out with Kramer basketball, it was pretty much all training, because I was assuming kids were doing the other things. And that's just not true. Now, there needs to be a lot of training and repetition, because that's what they're paying to come in. They're paying to learn. They're paying to be taught something that they can take and then do on their own with their team. So that needs to be the majority of the time, because that's what they signed up for. They didn't sign up to for a paid open gym, right? But to be able to do kind of like some controlled scrimmaging situations where there's a little bit of structure, just a little bit, and maybe which is why we get into small sided games, right? You give like a little bit of an advantage or a little bit of an angle or a certain location for the ball, and you just kind of give them some tips and just let them play, right? And I think we don't have enough of that, right? Because it's like you said, you might have your individual trainer, one-on-one skills coach. I'm in the gym working on my dribbling and shooting and finishing. And then I'm playing AAU or I'm playing for my school team. And there's a structure to whatever it is we're trying to do. That in between, it's a missing link for a lot of people. Am I hearing you right? Is it, or am I,
Yeah,
am I
no,
kind of taking my own direction?
no, that's exactly what it is. There's a piece missing, and it's rare that you see somebody that fits that criteria of being in the middle. In my opinion, at least.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What a big advantage that is, to have a little bit of the game smarts with being able to apply and kind of do what they're trying to work on is a big one. Um, Zach, closing thoughts, closing remarks, anything that you want to add? I mean, we've talked about mental and physical, we've talked about diet, nutrition, reading, game film, we've talked about just some of the logistics of running a camp. Oh, the Thumb Invitational. Talk about the Thumb Invitational. We brought this camp back. We ran it in 2013, ladies and gentlemen. It's 2024. 11 years since we ran this specific camp. And because of my summer schedule, yourself, you kind of led it. Evan Neff was running it in tandem with you. And then we brought in some other coaches, your brother Nick, some other coaches to help out and run that event. what was the Thumb Invitational? What were some of the things that you focused on? Do you plan on doing that again? We kind of incorporated that a little bit. I came for the last hour and a half, and I was like, dude, Zach's got this thing under control. So I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it. So go ahead.
Yeah, so the Thumb Invitational was Michigan's a mitten. It's the Thumb area. So the three counties that are generally in the Thumb are Tuscola, Huron, and Santa Ana counties. So we wanted to get the best players in the area, and get them all in one gym. Instruction, we probably had 90%, 95% of the best players in the area. There's football, there's other camps and stuff. Guys can come, and then we invited two high-level players that weren't in that area, but a part of the Kramer basketball family, part of Kramer basketball camps, to come and just increase the talent level. So it was, I think, a 5-hour camp, and we did a lot of instruction, a lot of teaching, but we also did a lot of playing. We wanted to teach them a skill. We wanted them to do a small sided game with that skill, and then we wanted them to try it in a 3-on-3 and then later a 5-on-5 action. So, like Coach said, we had me running it, and Coach Evan Neff, my younger brother, who plays at Kuiper College, was there, and then we had the Tripp sisters, who each played. One plays Division II at Wayne State, and the other one plays Division I at Detroit Mercy. And we had Adeline Moore, who's a Division III girls basketball player, and then so we wanted to get these guys and girls in the Thumb area, high level coaches, high level players, and we run Kramer basketball camps all the time. And, if I'm the best player in one area, I might not see the top three other ones because they have football or they're camping, but we wanted them all together. And we ended up getting film for that, so the players could play against high level players and get video of that. We had a photographer come. We had referees for our games, and we actually had college coaches. We had 2 college coaches come in. We actually had an offer given out at the camp, which was super cool for me to see. It was from Grace, which is the school I go to. So it was even a cooler experience for me. But that was the most fun I've ever had at a basketball camp in my life. And I plan on wanting to do it again. I've actually already been thinking about doing it again, and ways that we can tweak our formatting and who we invite and how we invite them and the system that goes into it. Because we went through by kind of cold calling coaches and texting them, but more of creating a system next year and being more organized and making it something that the players that missed out on it this year. I had one high level player will be a high school senior the next summer, so he'll have another year. Was like, I regret not coming. I want to be there next year. So I wanted to make it. My goal is in the Thumb area. This is the number one basketball thing you mark on your calendar you want to go to.
Yeah. And it was for a lot of those players already. I was talking to one specific player, and it was a month prior to that camp. He's like, dude, I have the invite as my background on my phone. He's like, I am so excited for that camp. He was like, practice, that was what was in the back of his mind, was he was working out throughout the course of the summer with that camp, right? Just because of the level of competition. I mean, you had to be really good to get invited to that camp. And it was an excellent, excellent camp, combined with the instruction was fantastic. And although we're always trying to improve the organization of it, it was really well run. I mean, you did an excellent job, especially for the first time running this specific type of camp. It's only going to get better as well. And just super cool. And I think we'll get more college coaches to come and check it out. The cool thing about that, for if you're a college coach, is, and I've directed different expo camps and stuff like that. You might have a kid that can play, but they get on a team where the point guard doesn't pass to anybody, and they never get the ball, and maybe the system doesn't really reflect anything that you would actually run with your college team. And so you're like, oh, they just don't look that good. But the way that we run our camp is there's skill work, there's shooting drills, there's 1-on-1, there's 3-on-3, there's 5-on-5. So if you can play, you 100% will show, will 100% be seen, right? And the different drills that we're doing, the different competitions that we're doing. And I wish other exposure type camps did that, because we had a girl Zach down here in Myrtle Beach. She went, I'm not going to say the name of the company, but she went to a big exposure camp, one of the biggest in South Carolina. I was asked to direct the camp, right? So I obviously watched my players play at the camp. She didn't look that great, right? She didn't look that great. She had multiple college offers. She had a Division I walk on offer, like because she can play. And but that was from her AAU. That was from her high school season. If you just saw her play in this 5-on-5 open gym style, she looked terrible, right? That's not what we did with the Thumb Invitational. Like this is real basketball. It's coaching, it's teaching, it's, Zach, you're breaking down a drill. Well, if I'm a coach watching, I'm asking myself, okay, I'm recruiting this kid. Zach just broke down how to do the drill. Does the player I'm recruiting, does he or she figure it out? Or do they need to do it again and again and again? That's IQ. That's processing speed. I'm learning those things because you just broke down the rules to a small sided game, and I'm watching this kid and seeing how quick he figures that out compared to, hey, it's 5-on-5. I'm not learning anything about a lot of the processing speed. I'm not learning anything about coaching, giving instruction. Okay, go out and execute because it's just, hey, just 5-on-5, play hard, right? So I can't say enough about the job that you did. I look forward to what that looks like in the future. It's going to be even better. And, it was definitely a highlight of the summer. And I wasn't even like directing it, which honestly was like a big weight off my shoulders to know we have this awesome camp that's taking place and I'm a part of it, but it's going to happen and I'll have to be in charge of it. So thank you for running it. uh, Zach, last question I'll run for you today. As a player, you've touched on this a little bit, but as a player from the time that we've spent in the gym together throughout the course of the summer, you mentioned the shooting and the follow through. You mentioned playing off 2 feet. Is there anything else that you're like, you know what? I ran all these basketball camps throughout the summer. I got thousands and thousands of reps doing shooting or ball handling because I got to show the kids everything that we're doing. Um, Anything that you felt better about, right? As far as like, man, I did all these reps during the summer as a coach, but it's actually going to help me as a player.
Oh, ball handling, and that's the easiest question that I think that you could ask me. Like ball handling, like I'm an okay ball handler, and I'm smart enough and I'm big enough where like I can handle the ball in situations. But it's something that I've neglected in my workouts for the most part, mostly because like one, I don't handle the ball a lot, and two, like it's something that I just cannot stand doing. But this summer, having to rep, pull dribbles, stick dribbles, slide, all these different variations. This is the best I've ever been at handling the ball to the point where like I'm going to open gyms and it's like, wow, Zach might get some point guard minutes this year because I played some point guard last year, but I got picked a couple times when I got picked up full court and then it kind of diminished and I went back on the wing. But it's like, no, this is the best I've ever handled the ball in my life. And so like I feel really confident and really strong handling the ball where like it doesn't matter who picks me up. Now I feel like even if I'm just protecting it and waiting for someone else to get it,
Right.
that's something I struggled with before versus now like I feel good
Mm.
picking up anywhere ball handling.
One, I'm really, really happy for you. That's awesome. And two, what Zach said isn't what most, at least players, think of when they think of ball handling. They think of moves to score, right? But what Zach's talking about, man, I really hope players are still listening. This has been a long podcast, I understand, but like there's gold throughout this episode. Ball handling is so much about spacing and security. If you can go from point A to point B, not lose the ball, get to the spot you need to for the team to efficiently run their offense, that is one of the most important aspects of dribbling that ball. And coaches need to hear this as well. We do a bunch of dribbling drills on Instagram and YouTube, and we'll get some coach be like, well, you're not going to dribble that in a game. I was like, really? Because I played point guard and shooting guard. And this is the stuff I used. So I don't know what your experience was playing ball, but like I'm teaching what I used or wish I would have done more as a player because it's not about a crossover and getting to the rack all the time. A lot of your ball handling, foul line below is to create a 2-on-1 so the ball moves and then somebody else gets a chance to run or shoot or drive or see a position and bring the basketball in from the backcourt. It's a lot about protecting the basketball against pressure. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a staple of Kramer basketball. It's not how many cool dribble moves can we make. It's being able to protect the ball against good defense by using our feet, using our body, right, and manipulating the basketball. That's some of the IQ we're trying to teach. And if somebody came and sat in on one of our camps, they would notice we spend so much more time on that than, like, as you know, like just the drive and getting by somebody. Of course we teach that, right? Of course we teach that. But I might do that from the back court to the front court to get by a defender and veer and like slow down. I might do that. It's not just like, hey, drive by somebody so you can score. We really try to emphasize that at our camps. And your ability to do that as a player now could open up, one, a whole new position for you. But two, as a secondary ball handler, how many coaches listening to this podcast wish they had more kids they could trust handling the ball against pressure? All of them. All of you wish you had more people that you could trust and say, you can have the ball and I'm not worried, even though they're full court pressuring you or they're trapping you, whatever. Why? Because you can use your feet, you can use your shoulders, you know how to move that basketball from right to left, from front to back. We all want that. And so that's huge, huge, huge. And Zach, you're a testament to that. You've always used your body well with your frame and your feet. And I think now the ability that, like, the hands and the ball have caught up to what you already have done very well with your IQ and your feet and your shoulders, for sure is going to be like, as a coach, I'd be like, oh, you bring it up in tandem. Zach, I want you in the backcourt. We're going 2-guard front, bringing it up against pressure, right? And so you guys can kind of ping pong the ball back and forth if need be. But I trust you enough to be in the backcourt with your other point guard, right, and bring it up as a team. And then we get into our stuff. What a relief that is as a coach, right? Anyway, lots of tangents for me. It's the first time give me some grace, listeners. It's the first time I've done a podcast in a few weeks. And Zach, I appreciate you. I get so fired up talking about this stuff. I could go for another hour and a half. This has been great. We'll have to have you back on and talk a little bit more about some of your prep leading up to your senior year of basketball season, man. I mean, are you ready? This is the final go.
I'm ready for it. I'm not ready for it to be over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword. Like, I'm excited, but like, it's gonna be weird not playing basketball next summer for the first time ever.
It is a weird feeling. That's for sure. That's for sure. Well, Zach, we'll have you back. To our listeners, thanks for sticking around. This was awesome. Zach, start studying, man. You got to get ahead of the game. Get some extra sleep. The books are coming up. September is going to be here real quick, and you got to be back in the classroom.
Yep, start 2 weeks. So I'm ready to get back after it.
Thanks for listening to the Coach's Edge podcast. Anything we can do for you, let me know. That lifting program Zach was talking about, that's in the Coach's Edge membership. Zach's dad is Coach's Edge coach member. He gets access to all that stuff. I'm happy to give you more information about that as well. Zach, thank you again. Can't thank you enough for being, our, the assistant head coach, the associate head coach, whatever they call it, for Kramer basketball this summer. It was a great run.
No, Coach, thanks for having me this summer. Thanks for having me on. And like Coach said, I'm not saying this because I work with Kramer basketball, but I think the Coach's Edge membership is super underused. So if you're listening and you're not a member, you haven't looked into that, I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah. There's some good stuff on there. Well, I appreciate that plug as well. Thanks for listening. Get after it today.